All right, if you have a Bible, turn it to Genesis 4. We are 4 weeks in, and we're on page 4. So a few years ago, a few of us were moving Matt McMains they're moving the McMains into a new place. And as we were moving, he locked his keys in his car. I don't know where you're at, Matt. There you are. Yeah, you remember that? And so have you ever done that? You locked your keys in your car. You can't get back in. Maybe you've locked your keys to the house. You've locked yourself out of your office, a safe, something that you've locked yourself out of. You know kind of how the progression goes. At first, you try a few rational ideas, you kind of problem solve, but then as it progresses, you start to get a little bit more and more desperate in what you are trying, right? I've hopped fences. I don't know about you. I've climbed stories. I've wiggled my way through windows to get into places. These are things you can do when you're small, by the way. And so I know what that's like to get there. Well, by the end, and it was hot, man. By the end of this, I'm sitting there like pulling with all of my strength. I get that. It's not much. But with all my strength, I'm on his passenger door while, Daryl has created this contraption out of hangers and wire that goes through the window with like this little hook on the end with a grabber and a pulley system trying to get the lock up, right? Have you ever been there? Have you done something like that? Yeah. And so it honestly made me think of Sandlot, okay? I love Sandlot. I've talked about it before. I'm not ashamed. I'm going to talk about it again, okay? So you guys know when the ball goes over the fence, they got to get back from the beast. And so what do? They start coming up with all these crazy plans, right? You remember this? What's first? It's kind of normal, just the stick, like through the little hole, right? And like it comes back and it's shredded and there's all this like nasty stuff on it. So then they get the pole with the bowl, like the kitchen pot, right? And they're trying to get it. Oh, they got it. Pull it up. And then it like comes flying over all mangled. And then you got the air attack and the vacuum one. That's one of my favorites, right? Where they've got these 3 vacuums and, hey, pull it up. And then it explodes their little house. And, the erector set. That's actually really impressive. I'm like, how did kids do that? I don't think so. But they did, and they figured it out, and they're going to catapult it back, right? These are the things they start to do to try to retrieve what was lost. And I always found it so funny and like this really sad feeling at the end of the movie when James Earl Jones is like, why didn't you just ask? Right? You remember that? He's like, you could have knocked on the door and I would have got it for you, right? And you're like, oh man, all these crazy elaborate plots to try to retrieve what they lost. All they had to do was ask. We're trekking through the whole Bible, Genesis to Revelation, and I've been trying to help you see, and we're going to see it way more in the coming few weeks. This is not a disjointed set of moral lessons. It's not a list of rules. It's not random songs, and it's not a Da Vinci Code to try to hack, okay? This is a story, first and foremost. And because it's a story, and it's not an encyclopedia or an index, you cannot treat it like you would ibuprofen or Zoloft, right? Like how many of us treat the Bible that way? You know what I'm talking about. You feel anxious, turn to the anxiety passage, Philippians 4. Feel weary? Hey, go to Matthew 11, right? Rest for your soul. If you feel in trouble, man, just read about David slaying that giant. You got this, right? You feel ugly? Go to Psalm 139. I mean, like whatever you feel, there's a verse to go there and retrieve it and try to make yourself feel better. Now, don't get me wrong. Those passages are spectacular and have amazing promises for us. But the Bible is not a self-help pill to pop when you're feeling down. That's important for us today because if it were a pill, ain't nobody going to Genesis 4 through 11, okay? Are you tracking with me? Did you read that this week? This isn't on anybody's list to feel better, and yet Psalm 19 from a few months ago said this: the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The Lord wants to revive your soul this morning through Genesis 4 through 11. And we've seen already a few chapters in the garden, 1 and 2. God, the great creator, has created, he's crafted, he's completed, and everything in Eden was what? Perfect, right? Human flourishing, pleasure, joy, peace, man walking in harmony with one another and with God. Everything was great, and then sin invaded. We saw that last week, and paradise was what? Lost. The temptation of sin, the essence of sin, the results of sin, the curse of sin, and the spread of sin. It separated us from our loving and good Creator. Now, there were seeds of grace and hope, but the resounding question as we kind of closed that chapter last week in the Bible was this: how do we get back to Eden? You remember this last week? How do we, as humanity, get back to that home where there's blessing and we're in right relationship with God? That's what we are going to pick up today. And as we do, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit, okay? So I'm shifting out of first gear because we're hitting like 8 chapters today. We're going into second and third gear, okay? So you're going to have to stay on the edge of your seat and track with me. And if there's something you miss, you can come back to it, listen, maybe grab me or someone else afterward. But I want to try to help you get the big picture. So a good tour guide is going to keep the pace steady. It's going to stop at key moments where there's beautiful vistas to look out, things to point out. But he's not going to get too bogged down in the weeds, right? He's going to keep the pace steady. So we're going to try to do that today. This is a tough one. We've got a trifecta of stories. Like Cain and Abel, Noah and the flood, Tower of Babel. And we're hitting them all today. Oh yeah. Buckle up, right? We're gonna be doing some work. You ready? Okay, are you ready? Let's go. All right. Yes, Tyler. Genesis 4, let's go. All right, here we go. Genesis 4. Now Adam knew his wife, Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I've got a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Okay, so we just left off with there's going to be this promise of a seed, of an offspring of Eve that will come and crush the head of the serpent, right? Next verse, here's that offspring. Woohoo, hope, okay? And by the way, this is amazing. This is the first birth right here. And think about this. God, the creator, has allowed man to participate in the act of creating. That's crazy, right? The life giver has allowed us to now be involved in the giving of life. That's pretty astounding. And we've got 2 sons, and they are contrasted. Abel was a shepherd. Cain was a farmer. Now, in the course of time, as they grow up, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock, of their fat portions. So fast forward, they're grown-ups now, and they're bringing offerings to God. I don't know why. I don't know if it was gratitude. My guess is some level they feel their deep need for God. They felt the divide between them and God, that they're no longer in Eden. So I think that's maybe what's going on, but look at what happens in God's response. And the Lord, this is verse 4, had regard for Abel, or he looked towards, or he accepted, that is, his eyes were turned towards Abel and his offering. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Okay, interesting. Why is that? Well, some say it's the type of offering, right? He brought from his harvest, he brought from his herd. It's a grain offering versus a burnt offering, but that doesn't make sense because both are talked about in positive lights later in the Bible. They have different purposes, and that would be a weird reason to reject Cain. So some say, well, it's because Abel brought his best, right? His firstborn, the first fruits, the top. It was a higher cost of sacrifice. Well, that may be a part of it, but I think there's more to it than just that, because it says he rejected Cain. Not just rejected Cain's offering, rejected Cain. He accepted Abel. There is something about the person themselves that is causing God to accept or reject. This is key. It's not just about the offering. It's about the offerer, the worshiper. Right? We read the rest of the Bible and we see God's not after the blood of goats and bulls and rams. Is this what he delights in? No, he does not delight in sacrifices, but in knowing him, Hosea 6 says. Like he's not a lifeless pagan idol that says, bring me the food that I need to sustain me on the altar. He doesn't need that. The earth is his. Amos 5, even though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I won't accept them. Right? Why? Because something about the worshiper is off. Something about the heart is wrong. Let's keep looking to see. I think we're going to see it very clearly. Verse 5, so Cain was very, angry. His face fell, his eyes fell. He was sad over his offering not working. Now, why is he angry? The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Love this, right? Why are you angry? Asked Jonah the same thing, by the way. Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? Remember, again, when he's asking questions, God knows the answer. He's trying to help us see something. And he asks, just like in the garden, he's probing him and inviting him out. And he says, if you do well, verse 7, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Anyone have a hard time with this verse this week? Doesn't this sound a lot like works-based righteousness? If you do well, you're accepted. If you don't, you're rejected. Uh-oh. That's trouble for me because I tend to not do well. Did you feel that? I mean, we need to go, hey, wait, this sounds like the opposite of the gospel. Well, let's take a look. What God is saying here is he's saying, you're angry at me, Cain, but are you not the one who hasn't done this with love in your heart and trust for me in the process? You're not resting in my goodness and trusting in my godness in the middle of this offering. You need to do this in a different way. You need to do this well. He did a good act, but his heart was not aligned in that act, right? Even though you're doing the act itself, you're not worshiping and obeying. We learned that from Hebrews 11:4 that says Abel offered this offering in what? In faith. Cain did not offer it in faith. There was no trust in God. His eyes were not looking to God. Abel's eyes were looking to God while Cain's were looking what? To himself. This is really important because God is spelling in chapter 4 of the Bible, there's no mechanical system for grace. Faith must be involved. I'm after your heart, your worship, your delight, your trust in me. And if you do this out of genuine faith and love, you won't be angry, Cain, and your face will be lifted. You will be filled with joy and peace. But if you go through the spiritual motions of external religion, if you compromise your standards and half-hearted me treat me like a vending machine, right? Where you just punch in the code C4, boom, right? Got your forgiveness Funyuns or something like that. Like, here we go. Got what I need from God. Thanks. Done. Then you're going to be angry. Because I don't play that game, God's saying. You want to play that game? You're going to be angry at me because I don't play that game. And watch out in your anger because sin's crouching like a lion ready to pounce you. And notice in this diagnostic and warning from God, he's also what? Inviting Cain to turn and change. He isn't, again, just like Adam, didn't come with the hammer immediately. He's going, hey, I see what you're feeling. Be careful. Run to me in your anger, Cain. Don't run from me. What does Cain do? Verse 8, Cain spoke to his Abel's brother. When they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel. He killed him. His anger was outletted not on his sin, but on his brother. Cain didn't master his sin, it mastered him. Do you see how quickly sin has escalated from the garden? And we have the tragic taking of life, the first death in humanity. Verse 9, God comes to confront. The Lord said to Cain, where is your Abel brother? Where is Abel, your brother? And Cain says, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Now again, hear the tone, right? I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Like, do you hear the scoffing in that? You hear the cold, callous lack of love in Cain's voice when he says that to God? Like, I just find that astounding, right? As he's deflecting, there's no sign of remorse. Am I my brother's keeper? And the answer is yes. Yes, Cain, you actually are. You should have been, and you failed to be your brother's keeper. It's the great irony in his question. God will not have it. What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Listen, there's accountability God is saying, right? His blood's crying out to me. God treasures all human life so immensely because great is his love and compassion on his creation that not a single human life will fall to the ground without the Lord taking personal notice in his heart of it, which is great comfort for those of you who have lost loved ones. Verse 11 through 12, there's punishment. Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be fugitive and wander on the earth. Okay, he's lost his home. His source of food is going to be frustrated. This is the curse just from Genesis 3, repeated, only stronger. We have a repeat of Genesis 3. Now in this, though, we see, look how Cain responds. He's jolted by this punishment. Verse 13, he says, my punishment is greater than I can bear, right? He's overwhelmed by the weight of it. Aha, maybe Cain is actually repenting. I don't think so. His sorrow is not over the crime, it's over the consequence. And we call this in the Bible worldly sorrow. He's not repentant for what he's done. He's just sad he got caught. Is feeling the results of it. Fear comes in, and he's concerned that he's going to receive vengeance from others. And in the middle of judgment, the Lord steps in with mercy in verse 15 and protects Cain, puts a mark on him, and says, if anyone does this to you, then they too will forfeit their life. Why? Because you don't correct sin with sin. One person's sin does not excuse your sin in retaliation. And because number two, vengeance is the Lord's, not ours. So the Lord says, no, I'll take care of you. But nevertheless, the episode in chapter 4 ends with a tragic distancing and separating away from the presence of the Lord. And Cain then goes off and does what? Builds a city. He presses against the very ramifications of his sin, right? He's battling the results of his sin instead of trusting God for his security. Cain represents the opposite of faith. And the last of the chapter does a quick ancestry.com, and we get down a few generations from Cain. We meet this man named Lamech, okay? And we see amidst city life beginning to evolve. There's cultural development. We got musical instruments now. We have metal work. We have a guy in Lamech who resembles Cain. In verse 23 and 24, his poem is describing how violent he is, that he murdered a man just for touching him. He's boasting in his arrogance. He's taken multiple wives against Genesis 2's man and woman coming together design. This is what has happened. Cain's sin has not been contained. It's spread and it's increased. That's the end of chapter 4, and that's the line of Cain. But we see another line coming because Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. So we've got another line from Adam, and chapter 5 is all about this family tree in contrast to Cain. And again, we go down to the 7th generation. Not a cleaning product, okay? Just 7 generations down, and we get not Lamech, but we get what? This man named Enoch, who does what? Walks with God. Very interesting, very important term. Walks with God, and then is what? No more. God takes him up. Oh. Well, that's interesting. The effects of the fall have exploded into Genesis 4 and 5, and in the middle of the wreckage is one who walks with God and isn't touched by death. Interesting. And then we get Enoch's grandson's a guy named Noah, all right? Which brings us to story number 2, chapter 6. Are you ready? Here we go. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for his flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Don't worry, in these 8 verses, in 6, 1 through 8, there's only 3 of the most bizarre and difficult interpretive passages in the whole Bible. Yeah, this should be fun for the next few minutes, right? How are you going to handle that one, right? Well, first of all, I'm not going to spend much time on them, okay? Here's why. Number one, because it's not the main point, okay? And I don't want us to get lost in the woods. Number two, because the only people in this room who care about this are, number one, Bible nerds. Number two, those who are honestly questioning and wrestling with Christianity, which is why I'm going to give it some time. And number three, those who attack and just want to oppose Christianity, right? So the majority of us in this room probably don't care about this. Now, we should care a little bit, but I'm just saying I'm not going to get into the weeds. Nevertheless, this still warrants some explanation. Number one, who are the sons of God, okay? What's going on with this daughters of man thing, sons of God thing, and God shortening the lifespan of humans to 120 years? There's several options, but two really main ones. The first being, honestly, actually the most common from early Judaism to even today. This is going to strike you as strange, but that the sons of God are actually fallen angels, aka demons, right? Who have transgressed their boundary and have taken human women as they choose and are having relations with them. Whoa, that's weird, right? First of all, what? Second, how? This is out there. And I know it sounds strange to us, but the sons of God is used 5 other times directly in the Old Testament, that phrase, and it always refers to angelic beings. Okay? Now, to be fair, there are other times where it's sons of the Lord God, sons of the Most High One, and it refers to just godly people. So it can still be humans, but people cite that. And then the New Testament uses Peter and Jude are going to refer to this seemingly very clearly in a way that actually makes us think this is fallen angels, which is why it's the most common view. Now, again, 21st century minds, Oklahoma, that's weird. That's a little too supernatural and out there. But just for a minute, first of all, you don't have problems with supernatural things in Hollywood and Netflix, okay? Just saying that, right? We get to the Bible, it's like, whoa, right? But the rest of your entertainment, you're cool with it, okay? So, just throwing that out there. Now, however, I get an amen on that one, okay. Even if that's what it's saying, how can demonic spirits do that with physical people? Well, fast forward to the New Testament, what do you see? Demonic spirits manipulating, possessing, influencing actual human beings to do wicked things. Wicked men and women allow them to kind of inhabit them, and they're kind of the force behind their wicked actions, right? We see that. That's not uncommon, and that's not strange. So even Satan himself, I believe, is referred to as entering Judas. So not against their will, but maybe that's what happened is wicked men and demonic forces are colliding, and they're forcing themselves on women, which, by the way, is where some people get the view, the next hard thing, this Nephilim concept, is, quote, the offspring of these angelic sons of God and daughters of man. Wow, that's really weird, right? These famous giant-like mighty warriors and violent men. Now, I don't think that's the case at all. It's not these hybrid humans. I think Peter and Jude are actually trying to dispel that exact myth from ancient writings like the book of Enoch. They were becoming famous figures, and I think it's here very clear grammatically that in Hebrew what Moses is trying to do is say, hey, no, this was already happening. Those Nephilim, those mighty warriors, those violent, kind of strong, battle-hardened men were already existing prior to this whole sons of God, daughters of men thing. So no, that's not it, okay? That's view number one. Whew, you tracking with me? All right, here we go. View number two, sons of God simply mean the line of Seth. So basically what this is saying is the line of Seth, this godly family, was intermarrying with the line of Cain, the daughters of men, this ungodly family. Now that makes sense with what we just saw in chapter 4 and 5, tracing both of these lines, right? And we're beginning to think, okay, well, this one's corrupted, but this one, there's still godly people in it. And God's promise of an offspring from Eve is still alive. But what's happening? Believers are marrying unbelievers. Wickedness is spreading. Corruption is permeating. That seems to fit also with the later commands when you go into the promised land. Hey, don't marry these Canaanite women who don't follow me, who don't know me, who don't love me. It's going to lead you into idolatry and sin. So both have a compelling biblical backing. I'm a bit of a toss-up, I'll be honest. I really don't know. And at the end of the day, I don't think it matters a ton. Here's what matters. This is sinful. Okay? It's spiritual compromise. It's sexual perversion. Did you see that in the language of this? They saw attractive, took. you remember that from last week? They saw the fruit Eve did, desired it as it would make her wise, and she took. This is what David does. Sees Bathsheba, desires her, takes her. The point is, this is sin. And the next point is, this sin is permeating. This survival of the fittest planet is emerging while brute force is ruling the day, and it's permeating humanity. Which is exactly why verse 5 says what it is. The Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth. That's their outward action. And that every intention of the thoughts of his heart, there's internal, was only evil continually. What a super sad statement about the pervasiveness of where we're at. Sin has flooded humanity. So God, the just, will respond. But first, look at this in verse 6 and 7. Here's our third interpretive challenge, and it's a very important one, actually. And the Lord was, sorry that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I'm created to the face of the earth, for I'm sorry that I have made them. Oh, weird. So at first glance, to us, modern readers, we hear that and we're like, okay, God regretted making us? He had a change of mind, right? He saw this was a bad idea, like the moment you wad up your sketch on a piece of paper and toss it into the trash can, right? Is this what God is doing in this moment here? Well, we know from the Bible, we know from the inevitable character of God that he's omniscient. He already knows everything across time. There's not a fact, a decision, an event that blindsides him, right? So he's not working and waking up one day going, man, plan B. All right, Team Trinity, Holy Spirit, you're on rain. I'll take the groundwater. Jesus, you take, the flood, plains, the rivers, the oceans. Let's go do this. I think that's not what he's doing, right? He's not surprised by anything, and nor does he change. I, the Lord, do not change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. There's not variables to God that he wasn't aware about. Another way to say this, y'all, is that God doesn't play defense. He never reacts. What we have here instead is the use of language. Language is limited in its ability to describe God, but still attempting to, so that we as finite humans might try to grasp just a glimpse of the heart of God in this moment. God's not an emotionless being. He's not robotic in his decisions, and what he's about to do is catastrophic. And so lest we think he's calloused and cold to his creation, we have clear emotional language to help us see that God's heart is grieved. He's displeased. He's torn up by the corruption and the pain that he sees. It's gone from very good to this. Is he surprised by it? No. Is he sorrowful over it? Yes. Just like Jesus in the garden going to the cross, he knows it's going down. Does it still hurt? Yeah. This language is attempting to capture the deep emotion of God. What man didn't feel over their sin, God does feel over their sin. And I think this is super important because sometimes we look at the flood and we go, man, this picture of God with this red hot anger, he's like a volcano of vengeance, right? Just erupting on humanity. That's not at all the picture here. He is a just judge, and he won't stand idly by, but the language of emotion we get is of grief and of sadness and of compassion. It's not smoke from his nostrils, it's tears from his eyes. And it's pain in his heart. And in mercy to stop the wreckage, he goes, I'm not going to let them keep doing this to each other. I'm going to step in. And the word he uses to blot out man is an important word, to wipe out, to wipe clean. You're going to see it 3 times in the passage. That he's going to undo creation. But in his undoing of creation, hold on. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Found, the word is grace in the eyes of the Lord. Okay, why Noah? Verse 9 is going to show us his character, that he walked with God. He wasn't perfect, but His relationship and devotion to God was unquestioned. He's a stark contrast to the rest of the bleak picture we've seen of humanity. And so God shares his plan with Noah in chapter 3. Did you see this? He's going to warn him, right? God's on the move to save. I'm going to destroy everything. Here's your way of escape. And he gives him some very specific detailed plans. Did you see this? Go build an ark, and he gives specifications. He gives a structure. Make it out of gopher wood. He gives size. Here's the exact parameters of it. He gives the structure, 3 layers in it all. And then he says to cover that sucker in Flex Seal. You know what I'm talking about? The pitch, the original Flex Seal of God right here. Cover it inside and out so that you might be sealed from the outside waters of judgment. And he says gives direction for all the animals to come on, to take extra animals, to take food. Wow, this is a big, big endeavor as he's going to bring a deluge on the earth to flood everything. But verse 18, I'll establish my covenant with you, your wife, your 3 sons and their wives. 8 humans will be spared, along with male and female animal of every kind to preserve life. Verse 22, catch this. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. Noah did this. 3 words to describe radical, extreme, painstaking, and exhausting obedience to God. No telling how many years this took to finish, right? This was deep, unshakable, unwavering faith in God it took to do this. In fact, Hebrews 11:7 says that by faith, Noah being warned by God concerning events as yet, what? Unseen, right? Like when Noah lays his axe to that first tree, there's no water, there's no raindrops. When he finishes the second layer of the boat, nothing's happening except people making fun of him. How's that boat going there, Noah? Right? Just mocking him. In faith, in reverent fear of God, it goes on to say that he constructed an ark for the saving of his household. What faith! Chapter 7 comes, and it's go time. Get into the ark. 600-year-old Noah does with his family. Man, they're going to get cozy for the next year, right? Like, you think quarantining is bad? Like, imagine this. A year in this ship with all these animals. Some of you people who love to, I love your animals. Like, you love to volunteer at the OKC Zoo. You might be up for something like this. I'm out, okay? This is not my idea of fun. Verse 11 through 16, the rain begins to fall. 40 days and nights. Waters from great deep burst forth. So we have subterranean water, springs, geysers, volcanoes. There's a seismic shaking of the earth's crust, not just rain. And then the Lord shuts him in before it all begins from the outside as the divine hand of God seals them in. Now, we see in verse 17, the rain for 40 days, and all these waters bursting forth cover all the mountains, and it covers it by 25 feet. Now, some people would like to say this is a local flood, this is a regional flood, just around their area. They don't like the idea of a global catastrophe. I don't know why. Usually it's just because, again, the supernatural box, they don't like to go there, right? But we can't accept that. And we can't accept that for a few reasons. Number one, all the mountains were covered. If it was local and regional, that wouldn't be the case. If it was local and regional, wouldn't Noah just kind of be commanded by God to go find the other areas of the continent and escape to that? Or wouldn't other people just find those areas and escape to it? Yeah, exactly. If it was a local flood, would a rainbow in the sky at the end of this really actually give us a promise he wouldn't do it again? Well, no. There's local floods all the time. We saw the images this week, right? Yeah, Ida swept up the Northeast, and we see pictures of half of houses being covered in water, half of cars. Like, this isn't a local flood. This is immeasurably worse in magnitude, and this is key as we consider its archaeological impact on the earth. The topography, the rock formations, the layers, the tectonic plates colliding, Earth's crust exploding with water and trillions of tons of water pressurizing it for an entire year. A global event of this proportion, we would expect to find the scars on earth, and we do. Caves and canyons, sedimentary layers pressed quickly with fossilization upon each other like it was buried very fast. We see it all over the place. The evidence of a global flood is there. But people want to explain it away. They say it's allegory, it's metaphor. This is clearly not possible. It couldn't have actually happened. But this geographical and this archaeological evidence have been shouting the opposite. This is historical. And did you notice in the account, as you read this week, there was all these timestamps? That was really interesting. We got a year of how old Noah was when the first day of rain came. And then we kind of get this like, all right, day 40, the rain stops. Day 150, the ark comes to rest on mountains. Ararat, by the way, specific, eastern Turkey. The waters from the ground were turned off. Day 224, other mountains become visible. Day 264, they open the window and the raven sent out. 7 days later, the dove sent out. Then a second trip and comes back with an olive leaf. Day 286, the third trip, the dove doesn't return. Day 314, the roof is removed and we see the earth is drying out. And finally, another few months, day 370, earth's totally dry. Noah and his family leave the ark and the water cycle is reset. Like, this isn't guesswork. This isn't estimates or vague generalities. It's specific. It's detailed. But Tyler, if it really happened, don't you think we would find evidence of it across all cultures of all time? Well, thank you for asking. Yes, we do. That's exactly what we find. Over 200 accounts from different cultures of a massive global flood somewhere in their story of how it all began at the early stages. Like this from China, where Fuhi is saved from the flood with his wife and 3 sons and 3 daughters. Or Hawaii, where Nu'u is saved on a canoe with all the animals. Where do you think that comes from? It's historical. And by the way, it's also heartbreaking. Like, I don't know if you grew up in church or not. You had the felt board. Maybe you had the mural on the wall of kids' ministry. Right? Like, if you didn't grow up in church, like, make fun of this part of Christianity, right? Like let's throw some images up here. This is what we got. Right? Yeah, having a good time. Noah's hanging out on the ark. It's always the giraffes popping up really high, too. Let's put this decal over our baby's crib, right? Oh, their little ark right here, right? God's going to protect them. And this one, let's get some candy out of the ark. Why not, right? Like, do something good. Get a little treat, son. Noah's throwing out Starburst. Even Fisher Price is in on the action, right? Oh, we got some commercialization opportunities here. Yeah, let's make some little people, right? Now, here's the deal. As cute as those things are, or the mobiles and your little, birthday party cupcake toppers of 2x2, here we go. Like, this is not the picture of the flood at all, right? This is the picture of the flood. You can't really see it, it's dark. But we don't want that on a mural in the kids' ministry, and we don't want that above our crib, right? But this is what happened. Lightning coming down, 60-foot squall waves, like people floating literally in the water. Like, I'm sorry I had to say that, but I have to say that. That's true. That's reality. This is what's happening. This is a definitive judgment moment in history. It is heartbreaking as God is blotting out, literally wiping clean, that's the word means, the earth. He's taking his eraser to his creation. But as he does, Genesis 8:1, God remembered Noah. Term of grace, covenant commitment. As they come out of the ark, God reiterates his covenant commitment to them, his blessing, be fruitful and multiply. And we get this language of recreation, right? Maybe this will work. God has pushed the reset button. Let's try this again with different characters. Noah seems very faithful. Maybe he's a better Adam. What does he do in verse 20? He builds an altar to the Lord, sacrifices, worships God. This is going really well. It's pleasing to God. Verse 21, the aroma fills him. He makes this covenant with man to never again flood the earth, right? This is going very, very well. I'm excited about this. We get the rainbow sign, and we get Noah's 3 sons now being sent out to repopulate, to fill the earth with the glory of God. Go image me again, guys. This is looking great. Noah's a good guy. I think it's really going to work this time. chapter 9, verse 21. Verse 20, Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. Garden imagery. Yes, this is working. Verse 21, what did you do with that fruit? He drank of the wine, and he became drunk. And he lay uncovered in his tent. Oh my goodness. Takes the fruit, too much of it, gets hammered, wakes up without his clothes on. This is going well. The immediate aftermath of recreation, we see another miniature fall. Fresh start, same result. And right after the fall comes what? A curse. That's what he does next. He wakes up, curses his son Ham, because his son Ham was mocking, humiliating him in his nakedness rather than clothing him in it. So we have creation, recreation, we have garden, we have taking fruit, we have a fall, we have nakedness, and we have curse. Sound familiar? Oh, yeah. Genesis 3 on repeat. All right, our last story, chapter 10, 11. We're going to blaze through it, the Tower of Babel. Chapter 10, all it is, moving to post-Noah, and we get the account of his sons spreading out across the face of the earth, kind of the origin of nations. Let's move to chapter 11, verse 1. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words, and as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there, okay? One common language. They come together, they hatch a plan. Verse 3, and they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. So they have their new technology, bricks. That's their invention. They have a plan. Let's build ourselves a city, a tower with its top in the heavens. And their goal is what? Make a name for ourselves, us, right? What are they after? They're after ascending the great divide between God and man in their own glory. And the Lord will not have it. Verse 5, he intervenes. He comes down. I love that. Like, your mighty tower, let me come down. Like, that's kind of some irony language. We come down to see the city and the tower which they have built. The Lord said, behold, they are one people. They have all one language. This is only the beginning of what they are going to try to do. And nothing they propose to do will be now impossible for them. They're going to keep on in this trajectory. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language. They may not understand one another's speech. The Lord dispersed them from over the face of the earth, and they left off building a city. God intervenes. He confuses their language. Their attempt is thwarted. Y'all, when God thwarts us, hear me, it's to save us. Maybe he's thwarting you in life right now. Maybe your plans are hitting obstacles. You had a plan for a new job, or you're doing a project on your home, or you wanted to buy something, or you have a date set out for something, and it's not working. You want a space for your church that's growing, and you can't find an open door, right? Hypothetically. Your plans are being thwarted. When God thwarts us, it's always to save us. He's lovingly blocking you. He's not threatened by our little towers. He just knows they're an endless treadmill of emptiness and pride, and he's after our hearts, and he will redirect us to save us from ourselves. Babel played out in an infinite trajectory is hell. Literally, hellacious. What Babel represents is the epitome of man attempting to overcome the problem and get ourselves back to Eden. It is human independence, human autonomy, self-sufficiency. What advancements can we use in our civilization to gather ourselves together and try to secure the goodness of Eden apart from God? That's Babel. It is overcoming exile on our own. Babel is godlessness. And it's not only a spirit of autonomy. It says we got this, but in the process it says we're awesome and we want the praise and the name for it. Listen, the deadly underlying belief of Babel is this: I don't need God. I'm cool. I got this. I'm all right, God. And I see this everywhere in America. I see it in my own neighborhood and talking with my neighbors. I see it in my own heart, and I see it in this room. rarely is it as blatant as what we see in the media and what people like Oprah say when they say, I am my own salvation. This is what she literally said. Let me remember there is no sun. Heaven is not a location, but is the inner realm of my own consciousness. Or Jim Carrey, who said, I am heaven. That is Babel. But it's rarely that blatant, y'all. It's far more often extremely subtle. It's a godlessness that's not seen in an outright opposition and rebellion to God, but a simple ignoring of God as we go about our own days and plans. Disregarding, neglecting, prayerless, dare I say, independent of God. We forget his faithfulness. We overlook our limitations. Just carry on, business as usual, while God is silently omitted from our thoughts and our schedule and our cries and our tears and our hopes and our affections. That's Babel. And in the end, the tower we're building is challenging God's supremacy, and he won't have it. As the band comes up, I hope you're tracking with where we're going today. How do we get back to Eden? Sin has spread. Sin has accelerated. It is pervasive. Things are not getting better. They're only getting worse. We're going the wrong direction. In story number 1, Cain and Abel show us what won't work. Human religion won't work. All your offerings, all your church attendance, all your sacrifices will not get you back to God. There's no systems. You can't fake it. You can't manipulate God for grace. In story number 2, Noah and the flood show us that human righteousness doesn't work, right? Because even if you nail it for 100 years, at some point you won't, right? You can obey and obey and obey and obey, but at some point you will disobey. And when you break the law once, you're a law breaker. You can escape death once or maybe twice, but not forever. None of us in this room have the faith of Noah, and he still blew it. It's on us to perfectly follow God. Our self-righteousness, it's a dead end. And then story number 3 comes in, and it shows us not only human religion won't work, not only human righteousness won't work, human reliance won't work either. All the self-sufficiency, self-rule, self-determination, all the progress of man as we come up with inventions and amazing advancements. And trust me, I'm grateful for many of those things. I'm grateful for clean water. I'm grateful for sewage systems. I'm grateful for anesthesiology. I'm grateful for the Chick-fil-A app. I'm a Red Status member, by the way. I'm grateful for these things, right? Yes, thank God we have been able to minimize the suffering of man at times, but also in our own inventions, do we not sometimes make it worse? And are we more at peace as humans today than they were then? Have we resolved guilt? Have we overcome fear? Have we conquered the grave? Or have we just delayed it? Have we actually gotten back to Eden, or are we just better at making counterfeits? The 3 stories today are telling us loud and clear, we will not appease our way out of the dilemma. We will not obey our way out of the dilemma. We will not achieve our way out of the dilemma. I don't know which one you're trying to do. I don't know which one you're more naturally prone to doing, but it will not get you there because the fundamental problem, the human heart, remains. Can't get ourselves back to Eden. We need a rescue. And I hear myself crying out like Cain, I can't bear the punishment of my sin. It's too much for me, God. I can't bear it. And you know what he says? You're right. And he sent one to bear it for you. The true and better Abel. The innocent brother who was slain by us, for us. And in faith gave the perfect and sufficient offering for all time himself. And where Abel's blood cries out for vengeance, Jesus' cries out for forgiveness. A true and better Enoch who did walk with God and in perfect fellowship emerged victorious over the grave. A true and better Noah who didn't just faithfully obey most of the time, but did it all the time. He didn't just build an ark of salvation. He was our ark of salvation. Like, did you know in the story when God tells Noah to cover the ark with pitch, he's literally saying this, cover, kafar. Every other time of the 103 times in the Old Testament it's used, it means to make atonement. Cover the ark with a covering with pitch. Kafar it with kofar. He's literally saying make atonement with a redemption price. Like, you think Noah, when he was writing that, was like, oh yeah, Jesus? No. He was like, why are you telling me to write this word, God? But God knew that one would come to be our pitch, to seal us on the inside and outside from the waters of God's judgment. Christ is that pitch, delivering our souls to safety. He will not blot us out, but he will blot our transgressions out by being blotted out for us. And he's made a way now for us, for heaven and earth to collide again as we ascend and descend on him. And as he does, he inaugurates the reversal of Babel, which we'll get to in the book of Acts, right? And the picture is coming one day of a new heavens and new earth when there is one language and all tribes and all tongues and all nations across all time are singing with one voice. Salvation belongs to our God. Worthy is the Lamb. The reversal is coming. So I just tell you today, if you've not trusted in Jesus, yes, God is patient. But judgment is coming. You may not feel it now. The raindrops haven't started. But there's a door you have to walk through in order to be saved. There's an ark of protection, and it has to be trusted. There's a covering of atonement, and it has to be applied. Take Jesus today. Run to him today. Let's pray. Oh, Jesus, we see you on every page of this story. We're mesmerized. We're amazed by your goodness. Help us today. We confess we are much like the characters in this story. We bring our empty offerings to you. We trust in leaky ships. We build meaningless towers, and at the end of the day, you're saying, stop. Rest. That's what the word Noah means, rest. Rest in me. Rejoice in what I've accomplished already for you. God, help us to do that. As we sing now, we sing out of faith. Our works are futile. They're empty. They do not get us back. But thank you that you have made a way. And so we sing, rejoicing gladly in what you've done on our behalf. Amen.